What's going on with the whole hatred toward Justin Trudeau? Despite living in Canada, my attention has pretty much been entirely on global news and media since 2020, exhausting me of learning any politics here at home. Trudeau seems to have a pretty bad reputation, with a dramatic decline in the public opinion over the last year or so. I've seen protests, general disdain online, memes, etc. I have no idea why people dislike him, and am not asking as if I like him or whatnot, a totally neutral opinion. Here's a poll tracker, and I thought to mention this too because of how many people had signs denouncing him. Answer. I'll start with some background. Justin's father Pierre Elliott Trudeau Pet was the Prime Minister of Canada for 15 years 164 days in two periods between 1968 to 1984, making him the PM with the third longest term, after Mackenzie King and John A. Macdonald. His government was finally defeated by Brian Mulroney's Conservatives, which after ruling for 2 terms in the 80s would suffer the largest and most humiliating election defeat in the history of the Western world. Going from a majority to only 2 seats in Parliament in a single election and being regarded as the most unpopular government in Canadian history. While extremely popular at the outset, referred to by some as Canada's answer to JFK, Pet became a controversial figure in time, had a number of scandals, most notably his handling of the FLQ crisis during which he enacted martial law. He is most well known now for running severe budget deficits and running up the national debt. Trudeau alienated the western provinces with his policies, favoring Ontario and Quebec, which have the majority of the population, and made him enemy number 1 of conservative-minded Canadians. Justin was born in 1971 and is to Canada was JFK Jr. was to the US. After working as a school teacher, Justin entered politics and served in the same Liberal Party as his father. His most notable scandal in the era being when he called Federal Environment Minister Peter Kent a piece of shit in open session in response to Canada pulling out of the Kyoto Protocol. He later apologized. After the resignation of former, and fairly unpopular Prime Minister Paul Martin, the Liberal Party went through numerous leaders in short order, most of which were politically damaged candidates that were further slandered by the ruling Conservatives. Justin's name was brought forward numerous times for party leader, but he showed no interest at the time. Eventually, he chose to run for Liberal Party leadership, which was quite popular notably with younger Canadians. His poll numbers shot up immediately, and it seemed certain that the Liberals would finally defeat the now very unpopular Conservatives of Stephen Harper. Justin was criticized at the time for being too young and inexperienced to be PM at 43 years. But people quickly pointed out Stephen Harper was only 47 at the time he became PM, and Trudeau technically had more parliamentary experience. On election night, the CBC aired various clips about Justin, including video of an interview of Pet outside the hospital shortly after Margaret gave birth, with the reporter stating, "I hear it's good news, and the name is Justin." They then showed a variety of interview clips over the years where Justin was generally making light-hearted jokes, and a fool of himself, as he was known to be quite the clown. Despite his playboy public image, Pet was known for being an intense intellectual and workaholic, much to the chagrin of his wife Margaret. When Justin was running for PM, a high-ranking member of the Liberals was asked if Justin was like his father that way, and after a brief pause he hilariously responded, "No." In context to the rest of the interview, he wasn't calling him an idiot, but rather Justin was more a people person than an intellectual. However, he does seem to share his father's intense work ethic. When Justin became the candidate for Prime Minister for the Liberals, he walked into that position with all of the baggage of his father's administration, and Conservatives have never let it go. The Western provinces hated him immediately, and his image has never improved. Trudeau was initially elected in a landslide, replacing 3-term, and by that point quite unpopular Prime Minister Stephen Harper. He celebrated by putting on a suit and going to the subway station near his home in Montreal, and greeted and shook the hands of his constituents as they went to work. Trudeau was a breath of fresh air for many after years of a Conservative government that practiced fiscal austerity, media censorship, and were accused of only being interested in staying in power. Harper's government is historically remembered as accomplishing nothing of lasting relevance or importance for the Canadian people. Trudeau came into power and immediately set about appointing a cabinet that represented Canada, namely that the members were chosen based on their ethnic backgrounds instead of qualifications. This proved ineffective, and after polls showed most Canadians didn't really give a shit about the particular ethnic background of the cabinet, it was quietly undone and cabinet members were instead selected based on their qualifications, for the most part. Trudeau, for his credit, has been a staunch supporter of the 2S LGBT+ community and regularly walks in pride parades. However, predictably, this has not done him any favors with conservatives. Edit. He also legalized marijuana use and sale in Canada, which, while a tad contentious at the time, was already in fairly common use, and is now regarded as having been the right move. The Liberals were immediately caught in a number of scandals, including when Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould resigned due to the SNC-Lavalin scandal. Trudeau himself was caught in a physical altercation on the Parliament floor with the opposition. And who can forget the pictures of Justin Trudeau in blackface while performing in a play of Aladdin at his old job? Trudeau's Liberal scandals currently make up 1/3 of the Wikipedia article for Canadian political scandals. It's also notable that the Liberals have been the constant target of botnet social media campaigns, the same as the US Democrats. Russia and China notably have been funneling money into disinformation campaigns to smear left-leaning parties in many Western countries, including Canada, which includes pushing a variety of conspiracy theories and racist posts. Trudeau's popularity started to decline, but this all exploded during the pandemic. Trudeau's government pushed for lockdowns and vaccine mandates as part of the pandemic response, which, while generally supported, resulted in a predictable backlash from conservative groups. This culminated in the infamous trucker convoy, during which truckers from across Canada occupied downtown Ottawa, forming an encampment that blocked roads and constantly honked horns late into the night, demanding the government end the mask mandates and lockdowns. The convoy also attempted to block key crossings into Canada from the US. After showing a remarkable amount of patience with the truckers, but not giving in to any of their demands, Trudeau ultimately chose to end the protests by enacting the Emergencies Act, ironically mirroring what his father had done during the FLQ crisis. While the Emergencies Act had replaced the older and more draconian War Measures Act, it still gave the government the ability to freeze bank accounts, stop funding for the protest, as well as arrest the protesters and have their vehicles towed. The Conservative leaders immediately smeared Trudeau for this act, despite the fact that it was later revealed that the Conservative premiers, provincial governors, were the ones that pushed Trudeau to enact the Emergencies Act in the first place, on a recorded video call that was later broadcast on the CBC. During the scandal, it was revealed that much of the funding for the trucker convoy was coming from American far-right groups and fronts for Russia. This further alienated Conservative voters and resulted in the motto F*** Trudeau appearing as bumper stickers on trucks all over Canada. Since then, the Trudeau government has implemented an unpopular and totally ineffective gun buyback program to try to take military-style firearms off the market. This was done in response to the worst mass shooting in Canadian history and the rise of mass shootings in the US. However, the law does not address the illegally smuggled guns coming in from the US that are the biggest source of gun crime. The latest issue comes from the immigration policy. The Liberal government has authorized 1 million immigrants, primarily Indians, to enter the country. For context, this is a net increase of 3% of Canada's total population. This has been slammed as an unsustainable immigration policy that is causing more problems than it's solving. This has resulted in a notable demographic shift in Canada, a rise in racism, and has made issues with our already overstretched healthcare system and housing shortage worse. The government has also been accused of using the immigrant labor to keep wages artificially low in a time of serious inflation. In general, Trudeau hasn't done himself any favors and continues to lose popularity all around. The only thing keeping him lately afloat has been the opposition leader Pierre Poilievre, who is a populist conservative. Poilievre has been gaining in popularity, but Canada is generally centre-left politically, and Poilievre is considered far too right-wing for the average Canadian. This has resulted in increasing popularity for Canada's left-wing party, the NDP, which gained in the popular vote in the last election. Similarly, an extreme right-wing party, the People's Party of Canada, has been eroding away support for the Conservatives, showing that extremist right-wing views are starting to gain ground in Canada as well. The erosion of support for Trudeau is starting to result in calls for him to resign so that someone else can take the Liberal leadership, as the alternative, a Trump-like populist conservative, is too unpalatable for many Canadians. Pett famously stated that he took a walk in the snow, which made him decide to retire. Justin's time for such a walk may be near.